Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here, and if you've been watching today on the 18th anniversary of 9/11, you know that we've been going chapter by chapter in my documentary film released 11 years ago today, Fabled Enemies. Released for free, released to the world, and I thought it would be good to kind of go over some of these issues that still have not been resolved at all today. And that's why we're doing it. We're doing it live. We're taking your super chats, your questions, your comments as we go along. I want to remind everybody that you can see this film right here by going to my playlists in the documentary section. You can see more 9/11 stuff here at the Dark Overlord section as well. And as you can see, I'm doing 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 videos a day. In the last few months alone, the last 2+, I've kicked out 450 plus videos. We're at 500 plus videos here and almost 34,000 subscribers. So now's the time to jump into Fabled Enemies and the continuity of government, or shadow government, the deep state in this country.
It shouldn't come as a surprise that Global Guardian, a mass Armageddon drill, was in full swing. The drill would pose all sorts of threats, and even mobilize command centers known as doomsday planes that house top military personnel. Although originally scheduled for late October, it was moved up unexpectedly. One of these doomsday planes was on the scene of the Pentagon strike.
Now to one of the eeriest moments amid the carnage of 9/11, a mysterious plane was seen flying right over the president's residence. Even some CNN staffers saw it. To this day, it has never been officially explained. Tonight, Chief National Correspondent John King has new details about this great 9/11 mystery.
Today, 6 years after 9/11, the mystery endures about just what happened in the skies over the White House that terrible day. A plane flew right over it. But why? And what was it? It appeared overhead just before 10 a.m., a 4-engine jet banking slowly in the nation's most off-limits airspace.
About 10 minutes ago, there was a white jet circling overhead. Now, you generally don't see planes in the area over the White House. That is restricted airspace.
Two government sources familiar with the incident tell CNN it was a military aircraft, but say the details are classified. This comparison of the CNN video and an official Air Force photo suggests the mystery plane is among the military's most sensitive aircraft, an Air Force E-4B. Note the flag on the tail, the stripe around the fuselage, and the telltale bubble just behind the 747 cockpit area. The E-4B is a state-of-the-art flying command post, built and equipped for one reason: to keep the government running no matter what, even in the event of a nuclear war. The reason it was nicknamed the Doomsday Plane during the Cold War.
They exercise this type of thing all of the time, and they simply don't talk about it. So it doesn't surprise me that they are very closed-mouthed about it.
Ask the Pentagon, and it insists this is not a military aircraft.
The Pentagon will just lie about something like this? Remember, the drills, the command centers, the doomsday planes, the threat against Air Force One, the codes begotten, the international intelligence ring run by Israel that was found, the Pakistani funding, the protecting of the hijackers by the FBI and the Central Intelligence Agency. These are all facts. And now on the scene of the attacks, we have these doomsday planes, part of our shadow government.
And there is no mention of it in the official report of the 9/11 Commission.
Shocking.
But 6 years later, the Pentagon, the Secret Service, and the FAA all say they, at least for public consumption, have no explanation of the giant plane over the president's house, just as the smoke began to rise across the river at the Pentagon.
There is also footage of another white mystery plane in the restricted airspace over New York City before the second attack. And as the second plane strikes the World Trade Center.
Oh, look at that. It's still there. And it happens to be in the vicinity of the plane strike. Oh, there it is again. As the second strike happens. And they'll tell you there were no military aircraft near the World Trade Center. Near the World Trade Center. That's the kind of liars these fuckers are.
There were 5 E-4Bs in the air on 9/11. They are part of the continuity of government plans in case of an emergency. This program was launched in the early 80s, headed by none other than George.
And let me stop that because you can't see the FEMA. But do you get this? This is how our intelligence integrates all these agencies. The Department of Defense, the State Department, the CIA, and FEMA. And this is revamped in the late 80s, early 90s. And what I'm about to show you is a piece of CNN doing a report on it.
George Herbert Walker Bush
was being made to consolidate continuity of government programs across several major departments of the government under one office, which turned out later to be called the National Program Office. As I understood it, this office fell under the jurisdiction of the Office of the Vice President.
Then Vice President George Bush was the first in charge.
On 9/11, this program was put into effect.
This next one happens a lot these days. It seems like a story that is both reassuring and scary at the same
And
time.
let me just stop it there. You notice that that was all under the command of Daddy Bush? Remember when we talked about Daddy Bush being the Bush that was actually in the White House on the morning of 9/11?
Time. This morning we learned that the Vice President wasn't the only one sent to an undisclosed location on September 11th, that an entire backup government was and is still there and may be there for as long as anyone now at least can imagine.
Traveling in Iowa, the president for the first time discussed a secret ongoing operation designed to keep the federal government running if Washington is paralyzed by a terrorist strike.
I still take the threats that we receive from Al-Qaeda killers and terrorists very seriously.
The operation was first reported by the Washington Post and confirmed to CNN by several administration officials. The shadow or bunker government involves roughly 100 senior staffers from every cabinet department and major government agency. Operates primarily out of 2 secret bunkers in the eastern United States, and is charged with running the executive branch if communication with Washington is severed. The secret plan took shape in the minutes and hours after the September 11th strikes, as Mr. Bush took a cautious route back to Washington. And now, nearly 6 months later, administration officials are scrambling to get more telephone lines and high-tech computers into these secret bunkers. And at least one member of the Bush cabinet is being kept out of Washington at all times, under heavy security, just in case this so-called shadow government is activated and needs a leader.
Despite it being on television and in numerous papers, most people continue to deny that a shadow government even exists. Now, what if I told you that Dick Cheney was the reported head of this group on the day of 9/11? President Bush cracked jokes about it at a prime rib dinner. The vice president has been moving among secret locations to provide continuity of government. A year ago, Dick was running the country, Bush said. Today, he lives out of a little suitcase. Cheney has been part of the succession program since its inception.
To reduce the possibility of decapitation, the National Program Office was directed to create a new program to assure the continuity of government. It was known as the Presidential Successor Support System, or PSQ. Dick Cheney, Edwin Meese, Chip O'Neill, and Dick Thornburg all have been in the line of succession by virtue of their offices. But our sources say the NPO gave them additional responsibilities under the new system.
Additional responsibilities.
Cheney would arrive at the emergency center before the Pentagon was attacked.
Now let me stop. This is under contention. The 9/11 Commission report says he arrived afterwards. Now I was going to do a whole video of this because this is how the Vice movie begins. I will say this, that pictures were released in 2015 that appear to have Cheney still inside his regular office at around 9:34. So that would contradict what we're about to show you with Norma Mineta and other reports. I think it's fair that I do that because it needs to be said. I want the truth. I don't want some misconstrued nonsense.
Shortly after 9:30 a.m., the President's National Security Team is in the Situation Room, a secure communications center in the basement of the West Wing. Vice President Dick Cheney is there, along with National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice.
I arrived at the POG at about 9:20 a.m. I was made aware of it during the time that the airplane coming in to the Pentagon There was a young man who would come in and say to the vice president, the plane is 50 miles out. The plane is 30 miles out. And when it got down to the plane is 10 miles out, the young man also said to the vice president, do the orders still stand? And the vice president turned and whipped his neck around and said, of course the orders still stand. Have you heard anything to the contrary? The flight that came into the Pentagon.
Yeah.
When you arrived at 9:20, how much longer was it before you overheard the conversation between the young man and the vice president saying, does the order still stand?
It's probably about 5 or 6 minutes.
So about 9:25 or 9:26.
The 9/11 Commission would cover this up by saying Cheney did not arrive in the emergency operating.
And again, those pictures, they seem to show it. I don't know. I looked into the metadata. It says it's taken with a film Canon, 35 millimeter, I think. I'm not 100%. But Dylan and I went over it in one of our AMA talks, so I just want to put that out there.
Center until more than 15 minutes after the Pentagon strike. Many of the same people involved in the shadow government benefited the most from the war on terror. A key hub for intelligence was the Solomon Brothers building, also known as World Trade Center 7. This was a massive 47-story skyscraper that would have dominated most city skylines. At 5:20 in the afternoon, it would collapse into its own footprint. It also happened to be New York City's #1 spook house and operational center. It housed the Department of Defense, the Internal Revenue Services, the Security and Exchange Commission, the largest Secret Service office in the world, the largest CIA office outside of Virginia, and New York's Office of Emergency Management, or OEM.
Beyond the haunting presence of those still missing in the rubble, Ground Zero is filled with guns, drugs, and secrets. Number 7 World Trade Center was also the New York office of the Central Intelligence Agency. The CIA ordered the building surrounded by FBI agents shortly after it collapsed. Since then, they have been searching for computers and a safe filled with classified documents. Government agents watched the construction workers through binoculars as they searched.
The OEM was where local government would rally in the case of an emergency, such as a terrorist attack or natural disaster.
The command center on the 23rd floor is bulletproof and bomb-resistant, with its own air supply and generators. It's linked to city airports, the Coast Guard, and the Pentagon. Computers will soon have detailed blueprints of every major building in New York City.
Surprisingly, it would be deserted when city officials Barry Jennings and Michael Hess arrived.
When the Office of Emergency Management did an activation, they always included our locale. I received the call shortly after the first plane hit. I got there, I had to be inside on the 23rd floor when the second plane hit. Upon arriving into the OEM EOC, we noticed that everybody was gone. I saw coffee that was on the desk. Still, the smoke was still coming off the coffee. I saw half-eaten sandwiches. And only me, Mr. Hess, was up there. After I called several individuals, one individual told me that to leave and leave right away.
Both would go on network television on 9/11 and make the claim they experienced explosions inside the building as they tried to evacuate.
I'll give you a live picture down Church Street. Fire crews now walking back toward the scene. We have seen them all morning trying to walk away, because what happens is every time a little piece of the building comes down, a huge black cloud comes at us, making it almost impossible to breathe or see anything in front of them. But now, at least for the past couple of minutes, it has been clear from this space back on Chambers in that area. So now they're walking back toward the World Trade Center. And as we keep letting you hear the personal stories, the survivor stories of exactly what happened inside the World Trade Center when that first plane went in, and of course the collapses since then, We're going to bring more of those to you now. Barry Jennings, you're on the 8th floor. You work for the City Housing Department. Explain to me the moment of impact.
Well, me and Mr. Hesh, the Corporation Counsel, were on the 23rd floor. I told him we got to get out of here. We started walking down the stairs. We made it to the 8th floor. Big explosion. Blew us back into the 8th floor. And I turned to Hesh. I said, this is it. We're dead. We're not going to make it out of here. I took a fire extinguisher and I bust the window out. That's when this gentleman here heard my cries for help. This gentleman right here, and he kept saying, stand by, somebody's coming to get you. They couldn't get to us for an hour because they couldn't find us.
You thought that was it?
I thought we're dead. I thought that was it.
And that's all in World Trade Center Building 7. And it's unbelievable. And remember, they don't bring this up at all in the 9/11 Commission report. They wait 7 years to have a NIST report that talks about a new phenomenon that's never happened before and never happened since that brought that building down, called thermal expansion.
We have Frank Uciardo back on the phone with us, Brenda, with some New York City officials. Frank, go ahead.
That's right. I'm standing here right now just off Broadway by City Hall with Michael Hess, who is the city's corporation counsel. Mr. Hess, you were trapped in, I believe, 7 World Trade Center. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, I was. I was up in the Emergency Management Center on the 23rd floor, and when all the power went out in the building, another gentleman and I walked down to the 8th floor where there was an explosion, and we've been trapped on the 8th floor with smoke, thick smoke all around us for about an hour and a half. But the New York Fire Department, as terrific as they are, just came and got us out.
When I made it to the 6th floor, and there was an explosion, the explosion was beneath me. Keep in mind now, it's pitch black in there. All the lights went out. So when the explosion happened, it blew us back. I'm thinking I'm standing on the landing. I'm actually holding on to a pole above us. Really? And I had to climb back up because Hess is yelling, what do we do now? I said, there's only one thing we can do, and it's go back up. Both buildings were still standing. Keep in mind, I told you the fire department came and ran. They came twice. Why? Because building Tower 1 fell, then Tower 2 fell. And then when they came back with all concern now, like, to get me the hell out of there. I was trapped in there for several hours. I was trapped in there when both buildings came down. All this time, I'm hearing all type of explosions. All this time, I'm hearing explosions. When they finally got to us, and they took us down to what they called the lobby, because I asked them, I said, when we got down there, I said, where are we? He said, this was the lobby. And I said, you got to be kidding me. It was total ruins. Total ruins. Now, keep in mind, when I came in there, the lobby had nice escalators. It was a huge lobby. And for me to see what I saw, it was unbelievable. And the firefighter that took us down kept saying, do not look down. And I kept saying why. He said, do not look down. And we were stepping over people. And you know you can feel when you're stepping over people.
This building would fall into its own footprint at 5:20 in the afternoon at nearly free-fall speed. Almost 7 years later, there has still been no official reason given, but some have given the false impression that damage caused by the collapse of the Twin Towers brought 7 down. Despite the fact that no other surrounding buildings acted in this manner. Dr. S. Shyam Sunder would make the claim, on behalf of the National Institute of Standards and Technology, that on about a third of the face, to the center and to the bottom, approximately 10 stories, about 25% of the depth of the building, was scooped out.
Total lie.
Here's the south face of World Trade Center 7. Does it look like 1/4 of the building is gone?
And again, this footage may have been just after the first World Trade Center went down and not the second World Trade Center went down, but as you can see, the back of the building is still there.
Perhaps we should take a look inside. It appears it is not scooped out after all. Members of the media were reporting that the building had collapsed due to structural damage and fire, more than 20 minutes prior to it going down.
Because that
now,
makes
more
sense.
on the latest building collapse in New York. You might have heard a few moments ago, I was talking about the Salomon Brothers building collapsing. And indeed it has. Apparently that's only a few hundred yards away from where the World Trade Center towers were. And it seems that this was not a result of a new attack. It was because the building had been weakened during this morning's attacks. We'll probably find out more now about that from our correspondent, Jane Stanley. Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
The building can clearly be seen in the background as Jane Stanley reports its demise.
Jane, I think many of us, when we heard the news, perhaps on the radio earlier today, were...
The feed would be cut before the building collapsed.
And just couldn't comprehend it. I mean, it almost sounded too far-fetched. I was wondering what it felt like for you being in Manhattan. Well, unfortunately, I think we've lost the line with Jane Stanley.
They called me down. I think it was part of the 9/11 Commission. They asked me the same questions that you guys are asking me. And at that point, they said, okay, thank you. And they sent me on my way.
And yeah, you told them pretty much everything you just told us.
Yes.
That you were in the building, got rocked by an explosion.
Yes.
All that.
Yes.
And you know that they didn't mention Building 7 once in the commission report.
I told them that's where I was. It was very, to tell you, it was very scary because they looked like very important people.
Yeah.
They were questioning me about certain things. And, I don't know if they liked the answers I gave. I could care less. I gave my account of it, the truth, and that was it. That day I'll never forget. And the explanations that were given to me is totally unacceptable. Totally unacceptable. I'm just confused about one thing, and one thing only. Why World Trade Center 7 went down in the first place. I'm very confused about that. I know what I heard. I heard explosions. The explanation I got was it was the fuel oil tank. I'm an old boiler guy. If it was a fuel oil tank, it would have been one side of the building.
So guys, as you can see, there's not a lot left in the documentary. We're going to come back and close out with the anthrax attacks and the conclusion in a video later this evening. I'm also going to be talking about the first responders and firefighter commissioners out of Nassau County that are trying to get a new investigation into 9/11. We're at the National Press Club today. I'm going to be doing that. And let's see, I've got Assange for Action, or Action for Assange. I'm going to be doing that live stream coming up shortly. So make sure to check that out. Make sure you're subscribed. Remember, all of my films, plus all these other videos, are free to you guys. We're doing 3 to 7 a day about all sorts of subjects that actually matter. So if you want to financially support me, please do so with $5, $10, $15. Every little bit helps via my my GoFundMe. Don't have a Patreon. Don't have a Subscribe Star. I'm not a partisan guy. I'm here to talk about the truth, the predator class out there, that cabal that still continues to monopolize on the events of 9/11, both militarily abroad and police state-wise here with their track, trace, and database society. I will see you guys all on the flip for the final video of the watch-along with my film, Fabled Enemies. Thanks for watching.